we are going to present what is actually payroll and personal cycle in auditing. So, have a look. Basically, when we hear about payroll, automatically we already knew it's about payment we are going to receive at the end of every month as employee in organization for the service we already perform. So payroll is that when the human resource department call out an interview session to recruit new employees to filling the vacancy in the organization. When they already selected the talented employees, they are going to ask them to fill out the selected form given that contain personal information data, which known in audit segment as personnel. The objective of this cycle is to determine if the account balances that the cycle has adjusted are displayed fairly in relation to the applicable accounting requirements in Malaysia. So, in Malaysia, we are going to follow a few standards, such as for accounting guideline, we are using Malaysian Accounting Standard Boards, which is MASB. For auditing standard, we are follow Malaysian Approved Standards on Auditing, which is MASA, that issued by Malaysian Institute of Accountants, MIA. And other guideline applied in auditing is using MIA by law and refer also to Companies Act 2016. The best part about this cycle is that payroll only requires one transaction, where it only record employee service and payment for that service through payroll occur within a short time period. So, it is very different from other cycle, which require mostly two transaction classes. For example, is sale and collection cycle, where they include cash and sale receive and often include sale return and uncollectible amount in account receivable. So, as we can see from the slide on the second point, throughout the cycle, the accrued payroll and withheld taxes are usually small in comparison to the total amount of transactions for the year incurred. Last point for review is where the Inland Revenue Board IRB had stated the regulation to encourage effective control for withholding and paying payroll taxes, and had also stated the employees' attitude problem if they are not received or underpaid. Why do we need to audit over this cycle? It is due to the fact that all major expenses in businesses around the world come with a payroll segment. Because in this section, there is more likely to be improper classification and allocation, which may lead to material misstatement in deriving the company's net income. So, for example, the improper classification that usually happen is traveling and expenses. More intend to put this under general expenses, while it has on account and need to verify either it should be transferred under general expenses or traveling expenses. This is an illustrated table that shows the relationship between the four business functions in the payroll and personnel cycle. The next slide will go on in detail about this. So, check it out. In this cycle, there will be four business functions and accounts, each of which will provide a different explanation, use, document, and how to record it based on related activities. Human resources and employment is the first activity. There are three types of transactions in this activity. The first of which is how they record the internal verification of employees, the date of employment, pay rates, authorized deduction, performance evaluations, and employee termination are the data they must record. The deduction authorization form is the second. This form is used to authorize payroll deduction for future employees' benefit, such as income taxes, retirement savings plan, EPF, and health insurance. The rate authorization form goes last. This is the use to verify the payment rate and come from the labor contract information, or in the case of officers, Board of Director authorization. Second business function is timekeeping and payroll preparation. They have 5 related documents, and each of it carrying the different type of usage and recording. The first is a time record. This is a document that records when employees started and ended their working hours at the end of each day. This is automatically prepared at the office by the time reader and will be submitted weekly. If a group of employees fail to complete the time record, they will be required to complete it in order to receive compensated overtime or sick day leave. The second job is time ticket. This is required for employees who work at a specific time or in a different department from their boss. The electronic reporting system also automatically records this. The payroll transaction file is the third. The file is created by a computer and contains all payroll transactions processed by the accounting system during a period of day, week, or month. Employees' name, identification numbers, date, and various withholding amount are contained in the file entered into the system. The detailed record types vary based on the company. Payroll journal or listing is number 4. This report is created from the payroll transaction file, and the information entered is the same as in the payroll transaction file. It will be also posted to the general ledger and payroll master file at the same time. The payroll master file is a computer file that is used for recording and maintaining payroll transaction, either in wages paid to them, check number, date, or net pay. Next business function is payment of payroll, which only have 2 types of document and recording. Payroll deposit check or direct deposit is the first document. This is a transaction that happens when the department is charged with paying employees' salary in exchange for their services, while some small companies prefer to use cash. The biggest companies prefer to use check deposit by crediting overtime to each employee's bank account. This is the appropriate way to pay them because it requires upper personal authorization and evidence while doing so. Reconciliation of payroll bank account is the second. This is important for finding fraud and error in all cash accounts, including payroll. There is an impressed payroll account that can be defined as a separate payroll account with a small balance. To be accurate, immediately prior to distribution of the payroll, the figure of each net payroll is transferred by check or electronic devices, online transfer, from the general account to the impressed account. Impressed account limits the client's exposure to payroll fraud and separates routine payroll expenses from other expenses. It also makes payroll bank accounting easier. This is the ending of slide which on last part of business's function. This is called as preparation of payroll tax return and payment of taxes. EA form contain gross pay, income tax service held or monthly tax deduction MTD, deduction on employee provident fund EPF, zakat and SOCSO for the current calendar year. This form will be also submitted to the IRB and will be computed generated from the payroll master file. The payroll tax return form will be submitted to the IRB to show the payment withheld taxes and the employer taxes. This is the same form that was generated from the payroll master file and computer. Remember that MTD, EPF, zakat and SOCSO payments are due on a monthly basis.
I will explain about key internal control, test of control and subjective tests in payroll and personnel cycle. Now that you are familiar with the business function and related documents and records, in the payroll and personnel cycle, we will discuss assessing control risk, and the design of test of control and stability tests of transaction for the payroll and personal cycle. So, let's go. The first point is occurrence. In occurrence, the objective that related is recorded payroll payments are for work actually performed by existing employees. This is important because it means whatever we are paying for existing employees and for actual work. The number one is time record must be approved by supervisor first. Then, how do we test for this as internal control? We examine time record to see if there is approval. Number two, time clock is used for record time. In test of control, we will examine the time record. Number three, adequate human resource files are maintained. In test of control, the HR will review human resource policy if they have the original application that the employee submits. Example, check the credit report or the background of the employees if they have done a criminal before. Number 4. Employment is authorized. In test of control, HR department will examine human resource file. For substantive test of transaction, the auditor will review the payroll journal, general ledger, and payroll illness record for large or unusual amounts. Compare cancel check or deposit information with human resource records and compare cancel checks for proper endorsement. The second point is completeness. In completeness, the objective that related is existing payroll transactions are recorded. It means that all the transactions must be recorded completely without any missing. How do we make sure that the transaction is completely recorded? First, remember when it comes to completeness, we want to make sure we are dealing with the pre-number. The company says payroll checks are pre-numbered and accounted for. The test of control that we will do is we are gonna account for sequence of payroll checks. Number 2, bank accounts are independently reconciled. The test of control that we will do is discuss with employees and observe reconciliation. The substantive is we are gonna reconcile the disbursement in the payroll journal with the disbursement on the payroll bank statement for test of control number 1 and prove the bank reconciliation for test of control number 2. The third point is accuracy. In accuracy, the objective that related is recorded payroll transactions are for the amount of time actually worked and are at the proper pay rates. Withholdings are correctly calculated. It means that we want to make sure that a certain amount of pay rates has to be correct as well as the withholding. Number 1, calculation and amount are internally verified. How do we test in control? Well, we will examine indication of internal verification and as a substantive testing, we compute the hours, see if they are currently computed. Number 2, batch total are compared with computer summary reports. Therefore, in test of control, we will examine file of batch total for initial of data control, like compare totals to summary reports. For substantive testing is compare pay rates with union contract approval by board of directors or other source. Number 3, wage rate, salary or commission rate is properly authorized. In test of control, we will examine indication of authorization. For substantive tests, we must make sure that the gross pay is recomputed properly. The fourth point is posting and summarization. In posting and summarization, the objective that related is payroll transactions are currently included in the payroll master file and are currently summarized. Therefore, basically they are adding everything and it's being posted in the right places. Number 1, payroll master file are internally verified and tests of control we will examine indication of internal verification. We will see if the files are internally verified. Number 2. Payroll master file totals are compared with general ledger total. In test of control, we will examine initial summary total reports indicating that comparison have been made. For substantive tests, we will test clerical accuracy by footing the payroll journal and tracing posting to the general ledger and the payroll master file. The fifth point is classification. In classification, the objective that related is payroll transactions are currently classified. How do we do a classification? Number 1, an adequate chart of account is used. In test of control, the chart of control will be reviewed. For substantive tests, we will compare classification with chart of accounts or procedure manual. Number 2, account classification are internally verified. In test of control, we will examine indication of internal verification. For substantive tests, we will review time record for employee department and job ticket for job assignment and trace through to labor distribution. The last point is timing. In timing, the objective that related is payroll transactions are recorded on the correct dates. Number 1. The key internal control is timing is procedure require recording transaction as soon as possible after the payroll is paid. In test of control, we will examine procedure manual and observe why recording take place. For substantive tests, we should compare date of recorded payment in the payroll journal with date on cancel check or direct deposit and time record. Number 2. Dates are internally verified. In test of control, we will examine indication of internal verification. For substantive tests, the date on check with date the check clear, the bank will be compared. That's all for test of control and substantive tests.
Now I want to describe about classes of payroll expenses and related accruals. First is existence. Payroll expenses are valid and related accruals are valid liabilities. Second, right and obligation. Recorded payroll expenses and related accruals are expenses and obligation of the entity. Third is completeness. All payroll expenses and related accruals have been recorded. Fourth is valuation and allocation. Payroll expenses and related accruals are properly valued and allocated in accordance with accounting standards. Now I want to describe about payroll presentation and disclosure. First is right and obligations. All disclosed transactions relating to payroll expenses and related accruals have been occurred and pertain to the entity. Second is completeness. All payroll expenses and related accruals have been recorded in the financial statement. Third is classifications. Financial information relating to payroll expense and related accrual is appropriately presented and disclosed. Fourth is valuation and allocation. Payroll expenses and related accruals are disclosed fairly and at the appropriate amounts. Next, the key control for the payroll and personnel cycle for assessing control risks are discussed. First is adequate separation of duties. Separation of duties is important in the payroll and personnel cycle, especially to prevent overpayments and payment to non-existent employees. The payroll function should be kept independent of the human resource department, which control keys payroll activities such as adding and deleting employees. Payroll processing should also be separate from the issuance of payroll disturbance. For proper authorizations, as already noted, human resources department should be authorized to add and delete employees from the payroll or charge pay rates and deductions. The number of hours worked by each employee, especially overtime, should be authorized by the employee supervisor. Approval may be noted on all time records or done on an exception basis only for overtime hours. Independent checks on performance. Payroll computations should be independently verified, including comparison of batch total summary reports. A member of management or other responsible employee should review the payroll output for any obvious misstatements or unusual amounts. When manufacturing labor effects, inventory valuation, or when it is necessary to accumulate costs by the job, adequate controls are necessary to verify the proper assignment of costs. For the adequate documents and records, the appropriate documents and records depend on the nature of the payroll system. Time records are necessary for hourly employees, but not for salaried employees. For employees compensated on piece rate or other incentive system, different records are required. For many companies, time records must be adequate to accumulate the payroll cost by the job or assignments. Pre-number documents for considering time are less of a concern for payroll because the completeness objective is normally not a concern. For the payroll tax form and payments, payroll tax and withholding are important in many companies. Both is because the amounts are often to materials and because the potential liability for failure to timely tax forms can be disclosed. Preparation of payroll tax form as a part of understanding internal control. The auditor should review the preparation of the payroll tax form that the client responsible for filing, the potential for liability for unpaid tax, penalty and interest if the client fails to prepare the tax form correctly.
My name is Zairi and I will explain to you about analytical procedure and its possible misstatement, also methodology for designing test of details balance. So let's check it out. There are 5 analytical procedures and its possible misstatement. For your information, analytical procedure is on your left and possible misstatement is on your right.
The first analytical procedure and possible misstatement is compare payroll expense account balance with previous year, and its possible misstatement is misstatement of payroll expense account. Second, compare direct labor as a percentage of sales with previous year, and its possible misstatement is misstatement of direct labor and inventory. The third one is compare commission expense as a percentage of sales with previous year, and its possible misstatement is misstatement of commission expense and commission liability. Next, compare payroll tax expense as a percentage of salaries and wages with previous year. And its possible misstatement is misstatement of payroll tax expense and payroll tax liability. Lastly, compare accrued payroll tax account with previous years, and its possible misstatement is misstatement of accrued payroll taxes and payroll tax expenses.
Methodology for designing tests of details balance in payroll and personal cycle. The verification of the liability accounts associated with payroll, often termed accrued payroll expenses, is ordinarily straightforward if internal controls are operating effectively. When the auditor is satisfied that payroll transactions are being correctly recorded in the payroll journal and the related payroll tax form are being accurately prepared and tax promptly paid, the test of details of balance should not be time-consuming.
The two major balance-related audit objectives in testing payroll liabilities are accuracy. Accruals in the trial balance are stated at the correct amount. Cut-off. Transactions in the payroll and personal cycle are recorded in the proper period. Amount withheld from employees' pays. Payroll taxes withheld but not yet paid to the government can be tested by comparing the balance with the payroll journal, the payroll tax form prepared in the subsequent period, and the subsequent period cash disbursement. For accrued salaries and wages, the correct accuracy and cut-off for Accrued salaries and wages depends on company policies, which should be followed from year to year. Some companies calculate the exact hours of pay that were earned in the current period and paid in subsequent period, whereas others compute an approximate proportion.
After the auditor has determined the company policies for accruing wages, knows that it is consistent from the previous years,
Appropriate audit procedure to test the cut-off and accuracy is to recalculate the client's accrual. For accrued commission,
the same concepts used in verifying accrued salaries and wages are applicable to accrued commissions, but the accrual is often more difficult to verify because companies often have several different types of agreements with salespeople and other commission employees.
accrued vacation pay, sick pay, or other benefits,
The company policy for recording the liability must first be determined, and then the recorded amounts must be recalculated. The company policy should be in accordance with accounting standards for compensated absences.
accrued bonuses,
The verification of the recorded accrual can usually be accomplished by comparing it with the amount authorized in the board minutes.
accrued payroll taxes,
Payroll taxes can be verified by examining tax forms prepared in the subsequent period to determine the amount that should have been recorded as a liability at the balance sheet date. So, that's all from our group. We hope you have some ideas about auditing in payroll and personnel cycle. So, that's all from us. Thank you very much for watching this video. Have a good day.